back to the president's comments there. There's so much to go through there. The Second Amendment questions, which makes the NRA's head explode, and they've said as much. The idea that Alex Preddy could not be at that protest with a gun that he was legally licensed to own and carry in the state of Minnesota flies in the face of everything conservatives and Republicans have stood for and said for generations. When you had armed protesters in state capitals during COVID and around the 2020 election with AR-15s inside the Capitol buildings, Kyle Rittenhouse has become a figure in the conservative movement, a heroic figure to some for what he did with a gun at a protest. So Donald Trump and also people in DHS, they are really losing the Second Amendment argument when they make these points. There's the megalomania, I guess you could put it, on display when the president talks about the shooting death of Renee Good only in the context of her parents being Trump supporters. He makes that point time and time again. And then just to bring it back to Alex Preddy, saying we do all these good things and then, quote, you get one person a little bit wrong. The execution effectively in the streets of Minnesota on video is one person a little bit wrong. He's also wrong about what he claims thousands of thugs and murderers and criminals that are being deported. DHS's own data says that's not true, that they're not getting the worst of the worst. By the way, former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia issued this very warning to the MAGA base about the events playing out in Minnesota and across the country. In a post on social media, the Georgia Republican asked how the president's supporters would feel if officers during Joe Biden's presidency threw a MAGA guy to the ground, disarmed him, and then shot him dead. She writes in part, legally carrying a firearm is not the same as brandishing a firearm, adding, quote, you are all being incited into civil war, yet none of it solves any of the real problems that we all face, and tragically, people are dying. That is from Marjorie Taylor Greene, longtime supporter until just lately of President Trump and one of the leaders of the MAGA movement. Mike Barnicle, a lot to digest there. I'm just wondering what you're thinking and feeling as you hear some of the commentary this morning. You hear the president talking about this and the fact that DHS says we'll handle the investigation again here.
I'm having a jumble of thoughts. I've been having a jumble of thoughts for the past 4 or 5 days. And it's odd, I think, that some of us feel nostalgic about a country called America that we grew up in, that our parents gave to us. We just saw the President of the United States speaking yesterday from Iowa about how one of the victims' families was a Trump fan, as you just pointed out. The country doesn't belong to Donald Trump. It belongs to us. It belongs to everyone in America. It belongs to my children and my grandchildren, and I'm fearful for them because of what's happened over the weekend. And I've been thinking probably too much about it, but I harken back to 1968 when you could feel the nuts and bolts of this country popping loose. First, Martin Luther King gets killed in Memphis, and then Robert F. Kennedy gets killed in Los Angeles. During the month of May in 1968, the year of the Tet Offensive in Vietnam, 77 American boys were being killed every day. 77 a day for an entire month. We survived that. We grew from that. We learned from that. But now things move so quickly. Everybody with a cell phone taking films of everything. And the attention span in this country is far shorter than it was in 1968. We dwelt on 1968 for years, for decades. I still dwell on it in many respects. We don't dwell on much for too long today. We have members of the United States Senate and the members of the United States Congress who get elected, and unfortunately for us, many of them, probably a majority of them, care more about their re-election than they do about the fate and the future of this country. We ought to think more about our children and our grandchildren, those of us who have grandchildren, and think about what kind of a country do we want to give them? What kind of a country are we giving them? Not with silence. Silence won't do it this time. There's something wrong out there in this country. You can feel the nuts and bolts of this country being loosened every single day. Jonathan, you were talking earlier, just a few moments ago, about the prospect of an attack on Iran. I don't think anyone would be surprised if there was an attack on Iran in order to get the focus off of Minnesota.
Well, whether that's part of the thinking there or not, literally 2 minutes ago, the President of the United States posted on Truth Social about Iran, saying that a massive armada is headed to Iran. We're moving quickly with great power, enthusiasm, and purpose. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he says time is running out. It is truly of the essence. As I told Iran once before, make a deal. They didn't in terms of last year. He says the next attack, were it to happen, will be, quote, far worse. So certainly it'll be something else that we're all talking about. Major geopolitical ramifications as the president falls through with this. But to Mike's point, this adds to this idea that just there is such chaos. And that is part of why Donald Trump was elected, 2 years ago when he was brought back to term, because whether it was the border or prices, Americans just felt like, I don't like where the direction of the country is going. And that's why he was given a second chance at it. But Willie, we're seeing every poll of late suggests Americans are really deeply unhappy with his leadership of the economy, yes, which is supposed to be a strength, and then his other strength, immigration. He's significantly underwater because Americans look at what they're seeing in cities like Minneapolis and say, this isn't us.
There's one aspect of what happened over the weekend in Minneapolis that stood out to me, not as much as the shooting death of Alex Preddy on the ground, shot maybe 8 times in the back. That obviously is a stunner. Prior to that, moments prior to that, one of these supposedly ill-trained, they call them trained, soldiers of the street, that's how they view themselves with their fake military costumes and their masks and their sunglasses. One of them, who participated in hauling down Alex Preddy onto the street, says seconds before he did that, he rushed to push a woman into a snowbank.
Just part of what started this, yeah.
Tough guys.
And Alex Preddy was stamping in to defend her
effectively
and lost his life because of it. And by the way, Mike,
a good Samaritan.
He was in the street protesting exactly what you're talking about. He feels the nuts and bolts loosening. That's why he was there.
Yeah.
Protesting legally. And for it, he lost his life.